Emma Parker settled into row 8 of the small, carefully adjusting her while glancing out the window. She had never flown in such a tiny aircraft before, just the two wings, a small propeller and the gentle hum of the engine beneath her. Most of her previous flights had been on large commercial jets, where passengers barely noticed the plane itself, but this was different. She could see the rivets on the wing, the sunlight glinting off the aluminum, and the landscape stretching endlessly below. The city, a patchwork of streets and parks, soon gave way to rolling fields and winding rivers as the plane ascended, offering a view she had only seen in postcards. Around her, passengers settled into their seats with varying levels of excitement. A young couple in row 6 whispered to each other and snapped photos with their smartphones, pointing out landmarks they recognized. Behind them, a small boy clutched a toy airplane, his eyes wide as he peeked out the window, imagining he was piloting a plane himself. Emma smiled at the scene, feeling a light-hearted warmth spread through her chest. This was supposed to be a relaxing, scenic flight, a brief escape from the stress of everyday life. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a travel magazine, flipping casually through glossy pages that promised hidden wonders and tips for adventure. Her earbuds were in, playing soft music that harmonized with the gentle hum of the engine. She thought about how ordinary everything seemed. The air smelled faintly of oil and leather, and the vibrations beneath her seat were minimal but noticeable. She adjusted her glasses and leaned back, savoring the calm. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, cheerful and professional, welcoming everyone aboard and outlining a brief overview of the flight path. Emma nodded absently, focusing instead on the rolling hills below. The interior was cozy, almost cramped, yet the atmosphere was friendly. Passengers chatted quietly, sharing excitement for the day ahead. A woman in the aisle seat next to the emergency exit was nervously adjusting her scarf, while a man in the window seat fiddled with a camera, testing angles and light. Children laughed and whispered secrets, parents glancing back and forth with smiles of reassurance. Emma observed the subtle interactions, noting how ordinary yet alive everyone seemed in these small, shared moments. She felt a comforting sense of anonymity. In a plane this small, every movement and gesture mattered, yet from row 8 she was invisible, a quiet observer of life unfolding. Even the turbulence felt innocuous. The plane wobbled slightly, nudging her shoulder, but it was barely noticeable, just enough to make her coffee ripple in her travel mug. She chuckled softly, shaking her head at her own overreaction. "Relax, Emma," she murmured to herself. This was nothing, just a minor shift in the air currents. She leaned her head against the window and let her mind wander, imagining the adventures she might encounter once the plane touched down. Her thoughts floated like clouds, light and unburdened. Yet even in this calm, ordinary moment, the day was quietly setting the stage for something extraordinary. The hum of the engine, the soft chatter, the serene view, all of it felt almost cinematic, like the pause before a scene shifted dramatically. Emma had no idea that within minutes, row 8, the seat she occupied so comfortably, would become the vantage point from which she would confront fear, make split-second decisions, and discover a courage she never knew she had. For now, though, it was just another ordinary flight, a tranquil beginning to a day she would remember forever. As the plane continued to climb, sunlight spilling across the cabin in warm, golden beams, Emma leaned back, closed her eyes for a brief moment, and let the hum of the engine lull her into a sense of security. Ordinary, calm, predictable. A feeling that she couldn't have known would be shattered in an instant. The serene hum of the shifted in an instant. A sudden jolt rattled the cabin, sending Emma's magazine tumbling to the floor. Her coffee swirled dangerously in its cup, and she gripped the edge of the seat in alarm. Around her, passengers froze mid-conversation, eyes wide, faces paling. The engine, which had previously emitted a steady, comforting hum, now sputtered violently. A series of loud clicks and pops echoed through the small cabin. Emma's heart skipped a beat, an icy tendril of dread winding its way through her chest. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, sharp with tension. Ladies, and we're experiencing mechanical issues. Please remain seated and calm." But calm was impossible. The plane tilted unexpectedly, jerking sideways as if caught in an invisible grip. Children screamed. A man too rose ahead, clutched the armrest so tightly his knuckles turned white. A woman gasped, covering her mouth, eyes darting frantically toward the pilot, then to the tiny windows through which the sprawling earth rushed by in terrifying proximity. Emma felt the floor shift under her, a subtle, terrifying sensation that told her something was very, very wrong. She glanced at the pilot. His hands were steady but tense, gripping the controls with white-knuckled determination. Beads of sweat dotted his brow. His eyes flicked to the instruments repeatedly as if seeking answers they might not provide. Emma's stomach lurched. She had seen turbulence before, yes, but this was different. This was no casual wobble or minor gust. This was fear in a physical form. The plane dipped again, sharper this time, tilting alarmingly. Objects slid across the floor. A water bottle clanged against a seat, magazines scattered, and a laptop teetered dangerously on a tray table. Passengers' voices rose in panic. A man yelled, "What's happening?" A child whimpered uncontrollably, clinging to their mother's arm. Someone screamed for help. Emma's ears rang with a cacophony of fear, a harsh contrast to the soothing music she had been listening to moments before. The initial shock froze her for a heartbeat, her mind struggling to process the sudden danger. Then the realization hit like a hammer. This wasn't a minor incident. The plane was falling and someone had to act fast. Emma's instincts began to override her fear. Her eyes scanned the small cabin, taking in the terrified faces, the chaotic movements, the clattering objects. Every passenger was vulnerable, utterly reliant on the pilot and whatever help could come from within this cramped space. And then her gaze landed on the intercom microphone. It was small, simple, and unassuming, but in that moment it represented a lifeline. Someone needed to take control of the panic, someone needed to give direction. Emma's mind raced, calculating what she could do. Could she really help? She had no training, no experience, just an ordinary set of instincts and a determination not to watch disaster unfold. Her pulse pounded so loudly she was certain the entire cabin could hear it. Sweat trickled down the back of her neck. Around her, passengers continued to panic, voices rising and overlapping. Emma took a deep breath, trying to calm herself long enough to think clearly. Okay, she muttered under her breath. I can do this. I have to do this. Fear was still there, gnawing at her stomach, but determination replaced paralysis. For the first time, the ordinary passenger in row 8 felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. As the plane lurched again, the gravity of the situation became undeniable. Each second stretched into an eternity. Emma realized that waiting for help or doing nothing was no longer an option. She needed to step forward, and she needed to do it now. Reaching toward the microphone, she could feel the tremor in her hands, the sweat soaking her palms. The cabin, filled with noise, panic, and uncertainty, suddenly narrowed to one thought. She could not allow fear to win. Not now, not ever. That split second, Emma made a choice. She would act. She would try. And in the tiny shaking, an ordinary passenger in row 8 was about to become something far more extraordinary. The plane shuddered violently, tilting as though caught in an invisible hand, and Emma gripped the armrest with both hands. Her breath came in shallow, rapid bursts, and the cacophony of frightened voices pressed against her ears. Passengers ahead screamed, children whimpered, and the clatter of unsecured belongings filled the cabin. The pilot's voice came over the intercom again, tense and strained, trying to stabilize, hold on. But his words did little to calm anyone. The sound was hollow, overpowered by the metallic groans of the aircraft. Emma's stomach knotted. There was in serious trouble. For a moment she felt paralyzed by fear. Her mind flashed with worst-case scenarios. A sudden crash, the helplessness of everyone on board, the thought that she might be powerless to prevent disaster. The ordinary routine she had embraced just an hour ago, reading her magazine, sipping coffee, enjoying the view, seemed like a distant memory. The world beyond the small cabin window, rolling hills and winding rivers, had transformed into a blur of danger and uncertainty. The serenity of flight had vanished, replaced by an almost tangible sense of impending catastrophe. Then something within her shifted. Fear was still present, but clarity began to emerge. She looked at the passengers around her, wide-eyed, gripping each other's hands, seeking reassurance that no one could give. And then her gaze landed on the intercom microphone. It was small, simple, yet powerful. If she could communicate, give instructions, guide people, maybe, just maybe, she could prevent panic from tipping into disaster. Emma's hands shook at the thought of speaking to the entire cabin, of taking responsibility for lives she barely knew. But the alternative, doing nothing, was unbearable. Her mind raced as she weighed her options. Could she really help? She had no pilot training, no emergency experience. But instinct, sharpened by the intensity of the moment, told her that action was better than inaction. She noticed the subtle movements of the pilot's hands, tense yet steady, his eyes darting across the instrument panel. He was skilled, yes, but one person could only do so much in the chaos. She realized then that she could serve as a bridge between him and the passengers, giving instructions, maintaining composure, and controlling panic. It was a role she had never imagined for herself, yet it had chosen her. Emma drew in a trembling breath. Her pulse pounded in her ears and sweat beaded her brow, but determination began to replace hesitation. She pictured the terrified child clinging to his mother, the elderly woman clutching her scarf, and the young couple gripping each other's hands. They needed someone to guide them, someone to anchor their fear. And in that moment, Emma understood that she could be that anchor. Ordinary passengers didn't step forward in life-or-death crises, but extraordinary circumstances demanded extraordinary courage. Time seemed to stretch. The plane lurched again, and Emma felt the sudden stomach-dropping sensation of free fall. Her hands found the microphone. It was cold and unassuming, yet it felt weighty in her grip. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to stay silent, to let someone else handle it. But a deeper, more compelling force urged her forward. She would not allow panic to reign. Not now. Not while lives hung in the balance. She opened her mouth, voice quivering at first. "Everyone listen to me. Please stay calm, stay seated, and follow my instructions." Her words were tentative, almost fragile, but the act of speaking gave her a sudden, fierce clarity. The panic in the cabin did not vanish, but it wavered, replaced by a flicker of attention. Passengers looked at her, startled, uncertain, yet willing to listen. That single moment marked the shift. Emma was no longer just a passenger in row 8. She had chosen to act. She had chosen courage. And in that choice, the ordinary became extraordinary. Emma's fingers tightened around the small, cold microphone. The cabin seemed to shrink around her, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. Panic still rippled among the passengers, but the moment she spoke, a faint ripple of attention followed. "Everyone, please stay calm," she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength with each word. "Keep your fastened, hold onto your neighbors, and follow my instructions carefully." The chaos around her didn't vanish, but it shifted. People glanced at her, surprised that a passenger was speaking, and slowly the tremor of fear began to stabilize into tentative focus. Her first concern was the children. A small boy in row 5 whimpered, his toy airplane clenched tightly in his hands. Emma leaned forward slightly and addressed him softly but firmly. "It's okay. Hold on to your mom. We're going to be safe. Just breathe." His mother's hand tightened around his shoulder, and he nodded hesitantly. The gesture seemed to calm those nearby as well. Even a small sense of reassurance spread through the cabin like a ripple across water. Emma realized that fear could be contagious, but so could calm. She made it her mission to be that calm. She turned her attention to the rest of the passengers. "Look at me, please. Everyone focus on your breathing. Slow breaths. In, out. You're stronger than the fear. I promise you we'll get through this together." Her voice grew steadier, her tone commanding enough to pierce the din of panicked murmurs. A man who had been gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles were white finally released them, inhaling and exhaling as instructed. The pilot glanced over, a flicker of relief in his eyes, recognizing the change in the cabin's energy. Emma's ordinary presence was becoming an anchor for everyone aboard. Objects continued to shift as the plane jostled, and Emma instructed passengers to secure loose belongings. Hold onto your bags, hold onto whatever you can, and sit as still as possible. Brace for any movement. She noticed a woman clutching her purse, trembling violently. Emma leaned toward her, offering a steadying hand. You're doing great, keep calm, you're safe. Every small act mattered, the guidance, the reassurance, the confidence she projected. She realized leadership in a crisis wasn't just about giving instructions. It was about presence, about showing that someone believed things could go right. The plane's violent dips continued, each jolt reminding everyone of the precariousness of their situation. Emma's hands gripped the microphone. Her voice was now steady, authoritative, slicing through the fear. Everyone listen carefully, keep your eyes on me, follow my lead, you can do this. Passengers, still tense, began to cooperate. Children stopped crying momentarily, parents steadied themselves, and a collective energy of attentiveness replaced the initial terror. The shift was subtle but crucial. Emma understood then that she wasn't just speaking into a microphone. She was speaking into the hearts and minds of everyone aboard. The pilot's voice came over the intercom again, relieved but strained. I see you, Emma, keep it up, we're regaining control. That acknowledgement gave her a surge of determination. Emma's ordinary self, the quiet, reserved passenger, was gone. In her place stood someone willing to take responsibility, someone capable of guiding others through chaos with nothing but composure and a borrowed voice of authority. Each instruction she gave, each moment she maintained control, was another step towards survival. As the wobbled again, Emma spoke louder, projecting clarity over the chaos. Brace yourselves for movement. Stay calm. We are going to get through this. The cabin listened. The tide of fear was no longer uncontrollable. And in that moment, Emma realized that courage didn't come from training or preparation. It came from choosing to act when the moment demanded it, no matter how ordinary or unprepared she felt. Emma, the passenger in row 8, had become the beacon everyone needed. The rocked violently again, tilting sharply to the left, and Emma felt her stomach lurch as if gravity had betrayed her. Her hands gripped the microphone tightly, knuckles white, yet her voice remained firm. Stay seated, hold on to your neighbors, keep calm. Each command she issued cut through the panicked noise, grounding passengers who clung to her words like lifelines. She realized that in this small cabin, her voice was more than sound. It was authority, hope, and the bridge between fear and survival. The pilot was battling the controls ahead, his focus intense, hands dancing across levers and dials. Emma instinctively relayed his instructions to the cabin, translating technical warnings into practical guidance. We're adjusting the engine, she said. Sit still. Don't panic. Follow my lead. Her ability to interpret and communicate critical information became a lifeline for the passengers. Some gripped each other, others closed their eyes, but all followed her tone and rhythm. Emma understood that in crises, people don't always need answers. They need calm leadership they can trust. Every movement of the plane demanded quick thinking. Loose belongings rolled down the aisle, a laptop slid dangerously close to Emma's feet, and a water bottle clanged against the seat in front. She leaped to steady the laptop, shouting over the roar, "Hold onto your things. Keep them secure." Her gestures, authoritative and deliberate, commanded attention. She helped a frightened child grip his mother's arm and guided a trembling elderly woman into a more secure posture. Every small act of care mattered, reinforcing her authority and helping maintain order in a cabin otherwise dominated by chaos. The turbulence grew worse, jolting the plane as if the sky itself were a threat. Emma's pulse pounded, yet she felt a strange calm settle over her. Fear was still present, sharp and immediate, but it no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it fueled clarity. She calculated every instruction before giving it. Prioritize safety, maintain composure, stabilize passengers, support the pilot. In that moment, she understood that true courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting despite it. And right now, every action mattered. She noticed a young man in row 7 gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles were nearly purple. Emma leaned toward him, voice steady. Breathe, In and out, look at me. We're going to get through this. Stay calm. His chest rose and fell slowly in rhythm with her words. Around her, others followed suit, responding to the sense of control she projected. The small shifts in the cabin's energy were subtle but significant. Panic was no longer absolute. It was tempered, contained, manageable. The pilot glanced at her mid-maneuver, a fleeting look of gratitude flashing in his eyes. "I've got the plane, Emma. Keep everyone focused," he said, voice tense but trusting. That acknowledgement bolstered her confidence. She was no longer a passive observer. She was an active participant in the survival of everyone aboard. Every word, every gesture, every instruction was crucial. Emma's mind raced as she anticipated the next moments. Sudden dips, abrupt turns, and the constant threat of disaster. She issued precise, repeated commands urging passengers to brace, secure themselves, and stay focused. "Hands on knees, lean forward if you need to. We're fighting this together." The combination of clear instructions and her calm presence began to transform the cabin. Faces still held fear, but eyes were fixed on her, trust forming where panic had reigned moments before. She realized that leadership under pressure was a balance of authority and empathy. Her courage wasn't about control, it was about connection. Each person she steadied, each passenger she reassured, strengthened the fragile structure of calm she had built. The ordinary passenger in row 8 had become the linchpin in a moment of crisis. Emma understood then that survival wasn't just the pilot's skill, it was everyone acting together, guided by someone willing to take charge. And in this small, trembling that someone was her, the lurched violently again, tilting sharply to the right, and the cabin erupted in a cacophony of fear. Emma felt her stomach drop as if she had been pulled downward by invisible hands. The plane shuddered, groaning under the strain, and the tiny aircraft seemed impossibly fragile against the turbulent sky. Objects skidded across the floor, water bottles rolled into corners, and passengers clutched each other with white-knuckled intensity. Emma tightened her grip on the microphone, knowing that the next few minutes could determine life or death. "Everyone, brace yourselves," she shouted over the roar, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay seated, keep your fastened, and hold on to your neighbors." Her words, repeated urgently and firmly, helped create a fragile order amid the panic. A child clung to his mother, his eyes wide, and Emma whispered to him, "We're going to be okay, just breathe, look at me." Around the cabin, passengers adjusted their positions as instructed, some trembling but all listening. Ahead, the pilot fought to regain control. His hands moved with precise urgency over the yoke, adjusting throttles and flaps in a desperate attempt to stabilize the aircraft. The engine groaned under strain, and the altimeter needle quivered dangerously. Emma relayed his instructions calmly but clearly, translating technical movements into actionable guidance for passengers. "Lean forward slightly. Hands on knees. Keep still. We're regaining control." Her voice, confident and unwavering, became a lifeline. The turbulence intensified. A sudden dip sent a jolt through the cabin, knocking a magazine from Emma's lap. She caught it midair without losing focus, her mind of every detail. "Hold on to your belongings. Secure everything you can," she barked. Around her, passengers scrambled briefly, then froze again, following her precise commands. Emma realized that each word, each instruction, was a small victory against the chaos threatening to overwhelm them. Seconds stretched like hours. Emma noticed a frightened elderly woman in row 9 gripping her scarf so tightly it cut into her hands. Emma leaned in, steadying her with a reassuring voice. "You're doing great. Stay calm. Focus on my voice and we'll get through this together." The woman's trembling lessened slightly, and she nodded. Tiny moments like these were crucial. Passengers' composure, however fragile, directly affected the stability of the cabin's collective energy. The plane began to level slightly as the pilot's adjustments took effect, but danger was far from over. Emma's heart pounded, her hands shook, but her mind was razor-sharp. "Almost there. Brace again for any movement. Keep calm," she urged. Her voice was a tether, anchoring everyone through the terrifying drops and jolts. Passengers' faces, pale and tense, began to reflect cautious hope. The worst of the descent had passed, and slowly this violent dip softened. Emma's own fear had not vanished. The adrenaline coursing through her veins was raw, intense, unrelenting. Yet she drew strength from her actions, from the realization that she had become the bridge between panic and survival. Every instruction she gave, every passenger she steadied, every calm breath she projected, was a lifeline. The pilot finally stabilized the plane completely, glancing back at her with a fleeting expression of gratitude that said more than words could convey. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the floated steadily through the sky. Emma allowed herself a deep breath, though she remained alert, knowing the danger was only partially past. The critical maneuver had succeeded, in no small part due to her quick thinking and guidance. The cabin was still tense, but the panic had subsided enough for passengers to regain control of their own fear. Emma realized in that moment that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the act of rising above it under pressure when everything is at stake. She had become more than a passenger. She had become a beacon, a stabilizing force, the calm in the eye of a storm. The tires screeched against the runway as the finally touched down, bouncing slightly before settling firmly on the asphalt. Relief crashed over the cabin like a wave. Passengers clutched each other, tears streaming, voices breaking as they murmured prayers of thanks. Emma's hands shook, the microphone slipping slightly from her grip, but she held it, her pulse still racing. The roar of the engine faded to a steady hum, and the terrifying turbulence was replaced with the gentle, reassuring vibrations of a plane rolling to a stop. A hush fell over the cabin, punctuated by soft sobs and whispered thanks. Children clung to their parents, eyes wide but slowly relaxing, faces still streaked with tears. The elderly woman Emma had steadied earlier reached out, grasping her hands with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Emma offered a small smile, though her own relief had yet to settle fully. Around her, passengers began to exchange glances, realizing they had survived something extraordinary. The fear that had dominated moments before had given way to awe and incredulity. The pilot exhaled deeply, wiping sweat from his brow. He glanced at Emma with a mix of exhaustion and admiration. "You did amazing back there," he said quietly. "I couldn't have kept everyone calm without you." Emma shook her head, still catching her own breath. She felt a strange mixture of pride and disbelief. She had only acted instinctively, following whatever courage and clarity had emerged in the moment. She hadn't planned to lead, she had simply risen to the occasion. Outside the plane, emergency personnel rushed forward, though no one was seriously injured. Passengers began to exit cautiously, still processing the surreal sequence of events. Phones came out, cameras captured the aftermath, and whispers of astonishment spread. Emma remained seated for a moment, letting her body absorb the release of tension, watching as the relief on every face confirmed that they were safe. She had been an ordinary passenger, but the extraordinary had happened in those hours above the clouds. News crews were already arriving at the small airfield, capturing footage and seeking interviews. Passengers recounted the story, emphasizing Emma's calm presence and clear instructions. Social media would soon light up with hashtags celebrating the passenger who had taken charge in the face of panic. Yet amid the attention, Emma remained humble, insisting that the pilot's skill had been paramount and that everyone's cooperation had been essential. Courage, she realized, was rarely a solo act. It was shared, collective, and often quiet. In the moments immediately after landing, the emotional release was palpable. Children clung to parents, adults hugged each other tightly, and even strangers offered tentative smiles of gratitude. Emma noticed how something subtle had changed. Everyone's perception of ordinary life had shifted. One minute they had been on a routine scenic flight. The next, they had faced the fragility of human life and the sudden necessity of courage. That realization settled over the cabin like a warm, sobering light. Emma allowed herself a deep, steadying breath, feeling the adrenaline ebb slowly. Her hands, still trembling, relaxed around the microphone. She looked around the cabin, noting the mixture of relief, exhaustion, and lingering awe in every face. Ordinary people had endured an extraordinary ordeal together, and in that unity there was a sense of quiet triumph. She understood, perhaps for the first time, the weight of responsibility she had assumed, and the profound impact a single act of courage could have on many lives. As emergency responders helped passengers disembark, Emma's mind replayed the flight in vivid detail: the turbulence, the panic, the split-second decisions. Every moment had been a lesson, every instruction a thread in the delicate tapestry of survival. And in that reflective silence, she realized something else. Life had irrevocably changed, not just for her, but for everyone who had shared that small shaking. In the days following the incident, Emma Parker's life shifted in ways she could never have imagined. News outlets had captured the story of the passenger in row 8 who had taken the microphone during a in and guided her fellow travelers through terror with calm, unwavering authority. Interviews, social media posts, and feature articles recounted her courage, portraying her as an ordinary person who had risen to extraordinary circumstances. Emma watched the coverage with quiet disbelief, still grappling with the fact that she had become the subject of widespread admiration. Yet amid the accolades and attention, Emma remained humble. In every interview, she emphasized that the pilot had been the true expert, that the passenger's cooperation had been essential, and that she had only acted out of instinct. "I was just doing what anyone would do," she told reporters. But she knew the truth. What she had done was far from ordinary. She had confronted fear head-on, made life-or-death decisions in seconds, and helped shape the outcome for dozens of people. The realization lingered like a quiet hum. Courage often comes unbidden, born not of preparation, but of necessity. Passengers reached out to her, sending messages of gratitude and even friendship. The young boy she had reassured wrote a letter, describing how her voice had calmed him during the terrifying moments. The elderly woman she had steadied insisted on meeting her again, bringing flowers as a small token of thanks. Each message, each gesture, was a reminder that her actions had tangible consequences. She had impacted lives in ways that could never be undone. It was both humbling and empowering, and Emma felt the weight of responsibility she had assumed in the skis still lingering in her chest. Even her own perspective on life had shifted. Ordinary routines now seemed infused with possibility and meaning. Emma noticed moments that previously went unnoticed: the laughter of strangers, the kindness of friends, the beauty of a quiet morning. Survival, she realized, was not guaranteed. It was something to be acknowledged, cherished, and lived fully. The day in the had imprinted on her mind a clear lesson. Courage and clarity could emerge from the most ordinary of people when the moment demanded it, transforming fear into action and despair into hope. The pilot remained in contact, checking in on Emma and sharing his gratitude repeatedly. He referred to her as a lifeline and recounted the flight to colleagues and news crews, emphasizing how her calm and guidance had been critical in stabilizing passengers. Emma smiled at his praise, but she felt no need for accolades. The reward had been in the survival of everyone aboard and the knowledge that ordinary people could rise to extraordinary occasions. It was a lesson in human resilience, humility, and the quiet strength of instinct. Emma's friends and family noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. She was more confident, more willing to trust herself in stressful situations. Fear no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it became a signal, a motivator to act thoughtfully and decisively. The experience had reshaped her understanding of her own limits, and she carried that knowledge into everyday life. Challenges that had once seemed daunting now appeared as opportunities for growth, requiring only calm, focus, and determination. Ultimately, the story of the became more than just a tale of survival. It became a testament to the extraordinary potential within ordinary individuals. Emma's actions inspired others, encouraging people to recognize their own ability to rise in moments of crisis. Courage, she realized, was not measured by training or accolades, but by the willingness to act decisively when circumstances demanded it. Emma Parker returned to her daily life, forever changed, carrying with her the memory of that turbulent flight, the gratitude of those she had helped, and the quiet knowledge that, in row 8 of a small, she had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. The ordinary passenger had become a symbol of human resilience, proof that bravery often emerges from the most unexpected places, and that a single person's courage can ripple across the lives of many.